The sound of the clock ticking in the small living room seemed louder than ever, each second stretching out painfully. I sat on the edge of the sofa, staring blankly at the television, though I had no idea what was playing. My hands rested on my knees, stiff and motionless, and my heart felt heavy, like it had forgotten how to beat properly. It had been like this for weeks. An endless cycle of fear, doubt, and confusion that twisted tighter inside me every day. Prashant had not come home yet, which was nothing new lately. It was close to midnight, and his absence had become so common that the emptiness beside me on the sofa felt more familiar than his presence. He used to text me, send a quick, "I will be late," or a simple, "working late at the office," but that had stopped a few months ago. He no longer cared to explain where he was, or who he was with. It was as if I did not deserve that explanation. I looked around our flat in Delhi, the one we had moved into just after getting married 2 years ago. It was not much, just a small one-bedroom apartment in Dwarka, but it had been ours. Back then, it felt like a promise of a life together, like the beginning of something solid and beautiful. Now, it felt like a cage, trapping me in a reality I did not want to face. The signs were always there, lurking in the small moments. At first, I had ignored them, convincing myself I was being paranoid. We all change after marriage, right? People get comfortable, routines shift, but Prashant's change had not felt comfortable. It had felt like a slow withdrawal, a pulling away. He had become someone else, someone colder, harsher. I remembered the first time he told me I did not deserve him. We were arguing over something small, I think, maybe about the laundry or the groceries. It had escalated quickly, and before I knew it, his voice had risen, and he was shouting, "You are lucky I married you. A man like me, with a woman from a lower caste like you do not deserve to be in my house." I was stunned into silence, my throat closing up as I stared at him, trying to recognize the man I had fallen in love with. He had never spoken to me like that before, never made me feel so worthless. He stormed out of the house that night, and when he returned the next morning, he did not apologize. He just carried on as if nothing had happened. That was when the fear began to settle into my bones. He started coming home later and later. Sometimes he would not come home at all, and when I asked him where he had been, his responses grew more cutting. "Why do you care? What difference does it make to you?" Or worse, he would laugh, a cold, bitter laugh that made my skin crawl, and say, "I just need you for sex, nothing else. You are not even worth talking to anymore." I wanted to fight back, to scream at him for reducing me to something so small, so insignificant. But the truth was, I was afraid that if I pushed him too far, he would leave me. And even though he was already slipping away, the thought of being completely alone terrified me. My family was far away, in Kerala, and I had few friends in the city. Prashant had been my world, and I did not know how to exist without him. I tried to be better, to be the wife he wanted me to be. I cooked his favorite meals, kept the flat spotless, and stayed quiet when he insulted me. But nothing worked. His anger only grew, and soon, the physical distance between us became more obvious. He stopped touching me, except when he wanted something from me in bed. And even then, it felt transactional, like I was just fulfilling a duty, not sharing intimacy. It was around that time that I started noticing the other signs. His phone was always on silent, and he kept it locked, never leaving it unattended. He would leave the room to take calls, and when I asked who it was, he would shrug it off. "Work, just work," he would say. But the truth settled like a knot in my stomach. I knew it was not just work. Then there were the nights out. At first they were occasional, maybe once or twice a month. But soon he was going out almost every weekend, sometimes during the week too. When I asked if I could join him, he would look at me like I had suggested something ridiculous. "It is not your scene," he would say. "You would not fit in with my friends." I felt a crack in my heart each time he said it, but I held on, telling myself I was overthinking. But one evening, as I was folding his clothes, I found the receipt that shattered my denial. It was from a hotel, the Oberoi in Gurgaon. The date was from a night he claimed to have worked late. The room had been booked for 2. My hands shook as I stared at the paper, my mind racing. I wanted to scream, to tear the receipt into pieces and throw it in his face. But instead, I sat there, frozen, my body cold and numb. I waited until he came home that night, his face flushed from too many drinks, and I held the receipt out to him. "What is this?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He did not even flinch. He looked at the receipt, then back at me and shrugged. You really want to do this? He said, his tone flat and emotionless. Fine, yes, I was with someone else. So what? What are you gonna do about it? I could not breathe. The world spun around me as his words sank in. He had not denied it. He had not even tried to lie. I realized then that he had never cared. Not about me, not about us. The man I had married no longer existed, if he ever had at all. I packed my things that night. I did not know where I was going, but I knew I could not stay. As I left the apartment, the city lights of Delhi blurred in my vision, and I felt the weight of everything crashing down on me. My marriage, my future, my life as I had known it, gone. But just as I reached the door, Prashant's voice stopped me. You are leaving? He said, almost amused. Where will you go? You have no one. And that was the worst part. He was right. I had given up everything for him, and now I had nothing left. But I walked out anyway, because staying would have meant losing myself entirely. As I stepped into the night, I felt the first stirrings of something I had not felt in a long time. Freedom. The road ahead was uncertain, terrifying even, but it was mine. And for the first time in years, that felt like enough.